So if you need to get your electric car fixed and you go somewhere that's any good at all, a place like, of course, Gruber Motors, what do they do? How do they diagnose it? What's even going on? Let's take a look inside their lab. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Ozza. And once again, joined by Pete Gruber himself. So cool. I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome,
Thank you for
Brian.
having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, so you have got this over here. And this is the cool place. What are we looking at? What do we got?
What we have here is the place that most people are surprised when they come in the door because they're looking for an auto shop. They're looking for, all of the trimmings that go along with an auto shop. And what we have is an engineering lab that's full of electronics. And this is a reminder what these cars really are.
Yeah.
They're computers on wheels. They have some tires and a chassis and some windshield seats, but the rest of it truly is what we do here.
Okay, so this is a big thing. What am I looking at?
What we're looking at here is what's called a PEM, or a power electronics module, out of a Tesla Roadster, the first generation Tesla. And what they needed to do was take all of that amperage and voltage that's stored in a DC battery system, about 1,000 pounds in a Tesla Roadster, and convert that to three-phase AC because that's what the car runs on. Now you might ask, well, they start with DC, why don't they do what they do in golf carts, which is have a DC motor? You don't need to do all this conversion.
Is it because you can't get regen?
Regen is part of it, and it turns out that despite all of this conversion that's being done through these electronics, it's more efficient.
Huh. I did not know that.
And how old, you might ask, is a three-phase AC induction motor? Well, it's Nikola Tesla's invention over 100 years ago. It's old tech.
Yeah.
So what we're doing here is, these are electronic modules that basically convert that DC to three-phase AC. And here you can see the three-phase boards, A, B, and C.
Now this is a smaller version of that. So that's 1.5 and 2.0, or what are we?
Exactly.
So what did they use in the extra space?
Well, in 2008, this is what the power electronics module looked like, and then they decided to do a redesign. These were not handling heat very well, and eventually, after VIN 500, they went with a 2.0 Roadster power electronic module designed by a company in Taiwan, and they were able to reduce the size, make it a bit more efficient as well, and that's where this PEM comes from. Fundamentally, there aren't a lot of differences other than the physical size.
But that's substantial. And I imagine a little bit of weight.
It is.
In a car where every gram counts.
Let me ask, hey Riley, do you by chance know where the Tesla Model S, the inverter is, that round piece? If you could bring that in, it would be really, there should be. If we can put them side by side, we can see the progression in technology.
Now, one thing that's worth mentioning is if you have a Roadster and you've never had it maintained, we got some serviceable parts. Tell me what I'm looking at here.
So if you own an exotic car, everybody knows that it's expensive, first of all, to maintain. Even oil changes are a couple $1,000s if you've got the right exotic car. And people understand that you have to do an engine rebuild every few, 30,000 miles for the Ferrari, for example. Change your pistons and rings and gaskets and your overhead cam belts and things like that. Or if your engine blows up, you're going to be in a world of hurt because of the expense involved. The EVs, the Roadster, for example, have the same issue, except the wear and tear is in the electronics. You have 21 large electrolytic filter capacitor who have a shelf life of 8 years. These PEMs are going on 16 years. And when you lose one of these and they go resistive, then you can damage these boards, which are no longer in production. So it's vital to do proactive maintenance.
And you said electrolytic. These are wet?
They're, well, inside, yes. They are electrolytic capacitors, and then you have contactors. Underneath here, you can see some of them. That's actually the DC to DC converter.
And we've got a donut.
It's the round.
Pass by your box.
Help yourself. They were so good Sunday. For some reason, they poured more glaze on those than I've ever had before, so I could only eat 3.
Well, fat kid that likes a donut. Who doesn't play.
Yeah.
What do you need? So you didn't want this?
No, we need if you can't find it, it's fine, don't worry about it, but it's a round inverter that has those sticky IGBT thermal things on them. Let's go take a look at an open PEM here, and you can begin to see, hopefully, this one has the contactors removed. Hi, Charlie.
Making a video.
There's one small contactor left in this one. In a normal PEM that hasn't already had the contactors removed, there are quite a few more. And let me see if I can find a contactor for you. Here we go. Oh, you were the one in that picture, okay. So this is a high current contactor. Hey Charlie, do me a favor, we're recording live right now. I'll come see you here in a moment, okay? It's one of our mechanic sons.
It's one of your mechanics.
Yeah. So these contactors age, and you can see the discoloration there. This is one of the old ones. And if you know anything about contactors, it's two pieces of metal that are opening and closing, usually copper pads, tin-plated maybe. And every time it does that, there's a bit of metal migration, arcing that takes place.
Right.
So these do wear out. We change all of the contactors. Then there were engineering issues in the original PEMs. What I mean by that is there were certain things that Tesla could not anticipate, such as the molding for this DC input block uses black ABS plastic.
Okay.
As it ages, it becomes brittle, and as they torque things down on it every year for an annual preventive maintenance, they eventually break and crack this. So this orange version here is actually one that we 3D printed and replaced because the original molding is no longer available.
Right. Why would it be?
Right.
Yeah. It wouldn't, they could give you a pallet of them and it wouldn't be worth it to tool.
And then there are engineering improvements. This, for example, is the motor block. They didn't anticipate that every year someone was going to go in here with a large torque wrench and they're going to disconnect these big single-aught cables that go to the drive motor. And every time they do that, they put stress on the back of that connector block. So what we ended up doing was we took out the plastic portion here, 3D printed this, and we put PEM nuts into the copper bus bars, so all the torque now is on the metal rather than on the plastic.
Of course. Of course. That makes, in hindsight, it makes sense.
In hindsight, exactly. And you know, no one anticipated this when Tesla built this. Another thing that we end up having to do, a lot of this documentation is no longer available. So what we end up doing, this is the CIC board, we have to develop our own test procedures, schematics, and you know, this level of documentation in order to work on these. So the necessity for a rebuild on this electronics module is vital to keep the cars alive, but more importantly, to prevent damage inside for parts that are no longer in production.
Right. On a new car, and I don't mean an early S, I mean a modern car. Do they have anything like that that's going to wear out in 8 to 10 years?
There has been a tremendous improvement in the replaceable items in the newer EVs. The deferred maintenance, the list is much smaller, and the replacement of those types of parts, because you're going to change the entire vehicle at some point in time, is, I think, going to erase that. The Tesla Roadster is going collectible. People are going to continue to maintain this. And that creates a difference between that and that Model S that may no longer be viable.
Right. And so what I believe I hear you saying is if you buy a modern high volume EV, it will last you at least as long as a regular internal combustion car, maybe quite a bit longer, but you won't be doing this to it unless that car has some kind of sentimental value to you.
Yes. It will last you until you upgrade to the next newest, greatest vehicle. And as you know, in electronics, there's a strong motivation to continuously upgrade because the performance gets so much better as time goes by.
I know people with very old Model S's who are the original owners and who will be driving them to San Luis Obispo next month to join us, you and I, in, you're going, right?
I'm not going.
Oh, you're not going to that one, okay. I know a couple who is driving their Model S to San Luis Obispo for the X takeover at the end of July, who are choosing to take their S instead of their much newer Cybertruck because they have unlimited miles still. And I mean, that's a lot of miles. So do that. Definitely do that. Now, a question I had for you is, you bring in a car, let's say the battery is just dead. It can't be revived. The first question is, where do you get the replacement and what do you do with the old one?
Okay. Well, the first reason the cars come here is because the car, the Roadster, we're talking about Tesla Roadsters now, gets bricked. And that's a term common to Tesla Roadsters in that if it hasn't been charged for a couple of months and it reaches a certain low state of charge, it will no longer accept a charge from the charge port door. The only recourse a customer has now is to ship it to a company like us, because even the Tesla service centers no longer do bricked Roadster recoveries. They used to about 10 years ago or so. We even rebuilt some of their recovery chargers to make them usable again, but they no longer do that. The only option at a Tesla service center for a brick Roadster, where the battery will no longer take a charge, is a $45,000 replacement. It's $40,000 for the part, $5,000 tax roughly. So that's why we look so attractive, because that's why so many cars come in from all over the US. We're able to recover that car. And if it's just a level 1 recovery, which is just trickling it back up, we're looking at about $2,000 to $3,000 versus $45,000. Now granted, you have transport on top of that.
Right.
To bring in a car East Coast, $2,500 even, you know.
But if, let's say let's say the battery is just gone. It is just, for whatever reason, let's say it was in a shipping container in China and later purchased by Dan O'Dowd without being repaired in the means. But let's say it's dead.
Right.
Where do you get the new one, and what do you do with the old one?
Okay, good question. First of all, the reason that a Tesla may not be repairable by us, a Tesla Roadster, is because the brick state is too long. And that sometimes happens if the owner doesn't realize that it's been a year since they've charged their car, or it's been in storage somewhere, and again, or there was a death in the family and the family didn't realize it had to be maintained.
Sure.
Those cars can still come here, and what ends up happening is we work very closely with the Tempe, Arizona Tesla Service Center. We ship a car there probably once a month on average for a full battery replacement. And oftentimes, you know, that if there's a problem in the car, now let's talk about that for a moment, the problem that caused the battery to get bricked in the first place is often invisible until a new battery goes in. When that happens, those cars get a new battery, then they oftentimes send them back to us to repair the electronics or what caused the failure in the first place.
So Tesla will still make a pack?
Yes.
If you really, really ask.
Well, not if you really, really ask. It's standard production at Lathrop, California.
Oh, okay. So then the question is, the old pack, where's that go?
The old pack gets recycled by Tesla. It goes back to Lathrop, California, and it's a 1-for-1. They don't make the chassis because it's a trapezoidal-shaped battery, which we saw earlier in the video, right? So they need that chassis in order to put new sheets into the. Do you want to go out and look?
It's a trapezoidal, but like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So they need the old chassis in order to
Oh God,
recreate.
make sure it fits.
Exactly.
Oh, for crying out loud. And then your batteries, when you get odd ones that don't work or whatever, you just recycle them.
Recycle. The places we recycle are, there's one in town. We also use Redwood Materials, J.B. Strobel's company. And the beauty of that level of recycling is that it is high-grade ore. As we said earlier, it's not like going to Bolivia, having brine ponds, collecting the brine, sifting out the lithium, shipping it across their country, shipping it across the ocean, across our country, all using fossil fuel to eventually end up with some lithium. With these battery recycling processes, it's high-grade ore.
Yeah, and it's in the same time zone probably as either the factory or the destination.
Yes.
So that's one thing I love about my car. One thing I love about my Model Y is that my battery came from Nevada and my car came from California. I mean, we're talking, that's a loop I have driven. And that's pretty unusual when it comes to anything manufactured, to be able to actually see where it's made. So I think that's pretty interesting. Okay, so we're gonna head out and look at some more engineering stuff.
All right, so we're talking about Roadsters. We've covered the battery pack. Let's go to the yellow Roadster. This one came from Ukraine.
Wow.
So yeah, cars come in from all over the United States, Canada. If you walk around, you'll see plates from virtually everywhere, but they come in from out of the country too. We had 3 Chinese Roadsters at the beginning of this year that finally ended up here, got sold. This one came out of Ukraine. Number of people have tried to repair this. It ended up actually, this car was sold in Florida. It was on its way to California, and the owner never received the car. They did some research, it was stolen en route, ended up months later in Ukraine. So they finally did the paperwork and all that, brought the car back to the United States, and people over there tried to work on it, people here tried to work on it. It's finally here, and it was a mess. Virtually everything that we touch is, has some sort of an issue, but we're finalizing.
So was that like something went a little wrong, they took it to their buddy who made it much more wrong?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It got bricked.
What's this?
That is a tow hook. That is a screw-in portion, and you see that's broken off.
Yeah.
The threaded steel portion actually got busted off, and it's for light towing, not heavy towing, which is what they tried to do.
Oh, I see.
And it looks like what Mike's doing here is he's going to pull a sheet on this car or put one back into the car.
Yeah, they're all going back in.
All going back in? Okay, good deal. So we have very strict quality control processes and checklists. And, we occasionally make a mistake, but it's certainly much better than what typically you find out there. Short machine shop here, a project here on the workbench. We're building a 50-volt power supply to supply the battery bunker, which I'll take you into next. And that's where we do all of the risky battery charging work.
Sure.
The Tesla Roadster, of course, with those 11 sheets, when we find a resistive cell, needs to have it isolated and then neutralized. And the way that we do that is, like on this sheet, we have a proprietary process where we go through, and it's typically a needle in a haystack. You've got, remember, 6,831 cells. Just one of those going resistive is going to kill the car because the battery safety management system won't allow a charge anything higher than the lowest brick.
Right.
There are 99 bricks, there are 9 on this sheet, and what we're able to do is identify what brick has the problem, but the most important part is what cell out of 69 cells in that brick is resistive. And the reason it's so difficult is all of those 69 cells are connected in parallel, so they all look the same.
I'm sorry, how many cells?
There are 69 cells in a brick. Yeah. And
Had to. You know the audience.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So let's go in the battery bunker, and I'll show you where all of the risky battery charging work takes place. By the way, this is a Tzero. This is probably noteworthy history as well. This is the car that started the EV revolution. In 1997, AC Propulsion Systems in San Dimas, California, got a grant to build 3 electric sports cars. The purpose of the grant was to prove that an electric sports car could be fun to drive. This is our tax money at work, mind you.
Yeah.
So thankfully they did. They used the money. They built 3 cars, and there was a genius behind this, Al Caccione, which is what AC stands for, not alternating current.
Okay.
He built 3 of them, and they took one of them to Laguna Seca. It had 28 lead acid 12-volt batteries in it, just like you see there. And with those 28 batteries, it had a range of 80 miles. It wasn't enough to really get people excited about it being mainstream transportation, but what really lit up the industry was, at Laguna Seca, this thing was clicking off 4-second 0 to 60 times embarrassing the Lamborghinis and Ferraris of the day.
Yeah.
A lot of people took notice. Martin Eberhard was one of the first, went to AC Propulsion, said, "You guys going to build this car?" They said, "No, we're an engineering firm. If you want to build one, we'll give you I will give you a sample of the car, a prototype." And what Martin commissioned them to do was change those lead acid batteries to lithium ion. And now the range went up close to 400 miles. It still had some design challenges. They had no thermal management. They had batteries in the doors. So if you got T-boned, you ended up with a lap full of batteries, right? Better than maybe lead acid with sulfuric acid, but still lithium ignites. So they eventually decided, there's a market here, and that's what prompted Martin Eberhard to start looking for a car company, because they were too small. They were about this size to build car bodies. They started looking for a car company that would sell them empty shell sports cars, gliders as they call them. And Lotus was the one that stepped up to the plate and said, "Yeah, we'll play that game. We'll sell you empty gliders." They got a contract for 2,400 of them, assuming that they could take the AC propulsion drivetrain and stuff it into the Lotus Elise. And of course, miscalculated. The 1,000-pound battery pack was bigger than they thought it would be. And they had problems with the analog power electronics module, so they had to develop their own. And that's one of the reasons that Tesla got so close to bankruptcy, was because they miscalculated so much of the initial design goals.
Yeah. And that's why you have to do the carbon fiber. Is you can't go with a slightly heavier body. The suspension won't take it. Now, what are we going to do now? Replace the last 7%?
So this car had a number of early advances that even today Tesla doesn't have. This car had vehicle to grid.
Okay.
Which means that you're going to be able to charge and backfeed voltage into your solar system, into another car, whatever you want to do. That was quite an achievement in 1997. The second thing was, this trailer hitch here was not to pull a boat or your camper. If you look at the pictures here, eventually you'll see what it was towing. And because in 1997 there were no charging stations, they actually pulled a Honda generator behind the car.
Yeah.
And when they ran out of juice, all of that net zero, no carbon emissions went away as you fired up that 2-stroke engine.
Yeah.
So that's the Tzero. This particular one went through a fire in 1997. So the skins had burned off. We sandblasted it, painted it the original yellow, and now we're able to see a cutaway version of that monumental historic car.
Yeah.
So what we're walking into now is a separate building called the battery bunker. And the reason we created this was to get the risky activity out of the main building and allow us to do battery charging in a controlled environment away from the rest of the cars. And what we have here is 2 rows being fed by bus bars, 50-volt power supplies, with DC to DC converters, just like the 11-point chargers. And what we're able to do now is bring voltage to any of these are Model S, Model X modules, or the Tesla Roadster sheets, to keep them at certain voltage levels.
So you just dial it in and away you go.
Exactly. We put in the voltage, we put in the charge current, and it sits there and it keeps it on life support until we need one of these as a donor sheet.
Wow.
And it can go in a Roadster or a Model S or a Model X. Everything here is built custom from our critical power division. These are UPS bus bars. Our machine shop built these panels for us, and again, everything is custom. For the holders for the sheets, we use UPS heat sinks and standoffs. So everything gets repurposed.
Toasty.
Yes. We usually have the AC running.
A little bit of juice in there.
Yeah, there is.
Wow. So here's a crazy question.
Sure.
What's your electric bill?
You know, I don't look at it.
Don't.
No, it was kind of like when I was driving muscle cars.
Yeah.
I knew I was getting 10 miles to the gallon, but I didn't want to see it.
Yeah. Because it's got to be, with all the charging and reconditioning and, I mean, just all of it's got to be.
Sure.
So you were going to show me some differences between.
Yeah. Did you want to shoot anything in the lab?
Yes, but we'll come back to do that.
Come back, okay. So we're walking over to our EV Preserve Roadster storage building. And
air conditioning.
what we found is that there are enough customers that have Roadsters that are beginning to realize that these cars are going collectible. And as a result, they are, some of them are sending them to exotic car storage type businesses. What we're also finding is that these kinds of businesses that store exotic cars, so we find that they brick the cars. And they're highly qualified, competent exotic car storage type businesses, but they're used to dealing with V12s and, you know, Italian exotics, and they really don't understand how to take care of an electric vehicle, as surprising as that sounds. And we just got another car actually about 3 months ago or so that got bricked in California, came from an exotic car storage facility. So what we developed was a building that is now dedicated to storing electric cars. We're going to put an OVMS system into every car, which means Open Vehicle Management System, which collects telemetry from the car, charge curves, voltage levels, and it reports that to our control system. And the best part is it reports it to the customer's cell phone.
Oh, wow.
So the customer's always aware what's going on with their car. And we have some customers already that have availed themselves of that capability. Now the building's still under final build out. In fact, we just put the gates back up on the outside this weekend, and you'll see as we go inside, it's somewhat still under construction, but able to store cars.
So if you live in Arizona part of the year and you have a Roadster, you can leave it here.
You can leave it here.
Bring
yeah.
it to you, rent your space, and it'll stay charged, secure. So there we go. We got a great insight to things like the Tzero, to things like battery recycling, battery repair, all that battery stuff. I do want to say a massive thanks to Pete Gruber and everyone over here at Gruber Motors for having me in and making all this possible and making me, you know, a little bit smarter. We'll see. In the comments, you can let me know, what did I miss? What did I misunderstand? Leave it, you must. And, you know, smack the likes, all that. Head over to Gruber Motors, and all their links will be in the description below. And stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on our next great adventure.